long before I ever thought about being a professional wrestler. I started drawing when I was 5 years old. I remember drawing Superman, Batman, all throughout elementary school and then through junior high and high school. When I should have been doing homework, I was drawing pictures. And I had always envisioned someday, I was a fan of comic books, a huge comic book fan as a kid growing up, and I had always envisioned, and what I hoped to do one day was draw for comic books. DC Comics was my favorite, Superman and Batman, my favorite superheroes, and that was what I had envisioned someday doing with my life or my career. And it just so happened that when I was about 17 or 18 years old, still drawing. I just gotten out of high school, and my dad was a big wrestling fan, and I was a wrestling fan as well, but not really as big as my dad. But on Monday nights in my hometown of Memphis, Tennessee, we had a live wrestling event every week, and every Saturday morning we had a 90-minute wrestling TV show that was live on our local TV station there. So my dad and I would go to the matches on a regular basis on Monday nights, and sometimes I would sit and do some caricatures or some drawings of the different famous wrestlers who, at the time in our area, the most famous guy was Jackie Fargo, the fabulous Jackie Fargo. There were villains like Tojo Yamamoto and that sort of thing. So I would draw some of these pictures, and some of the other fans that went to the matches, somebody just suggested one day, they saw my pictures, and they said, you should send those into the TV station and see if they would, maybe show them on the air. And so I thought, that's an idea. So I just took 4 or 5 of my drawings of Jackie Fargo and Tojo and put them in an envelope and addressed them to Lance Russell, who was the commentator on our local TV show there, and sent them to the TV station. And I don't even know what I was expecting out of them. Just hopefully they would see my art and like it. So anyway, the following Saturday morning, turn on the TV, 11 o'clock, and ready to watch the wrestling show. And when the show came on, Lance Russell was always sitting at a desk like this with his co-host Dave Brown beside him, and he'd welcome everybody to the show and tell them what was going to be on the show that day. And when the show came on, I see Lance Russell sitting there, Dave Brown, and I saw my drawings on his desk sitting there, and I thought, oh my God, here's my drawings. He's going to show my artwork somewhere here in the show. And so sure enough, about halfway through, there would be a point in the show where they would talk about the matches, the results of the matches that had taken place the previous Monday. And so usually what would happen at that time, this was in 1968 or 69, something like that. They didn't even send a camera crew out to record the highlights. They would just sit and Lance and Dave would just talk about, well, Jackie Fargo beat Tojo Yamamoto, and it was a tough match. Yeah, Tojo was tough match. They just tell the results of all the matches. Well, this particular day, they picked up my drawings and they said, well, Lance Russell, they said Jackie Fargo beat Tojo Yamamoto, and a young fan named Jerry Lawler sent in this drawing to kind of illustrate what happened. So they showed my drawings, and I was all excited. After the show went off that day, my telephone rang, and it was Lance Russell, and he called me up on the telephone, and he said, hey, everybody liked your drawings, and we were wondering if you could maybe do some more next week. And so I was like, oh, this was the greatest thing ever. So I started doing the drawings for the wrestling show on a regular basis. And you know how you see like courtroom artists, like, there's somebody that sit in the courtroom where they couldn't have photographers, so somebody would sit and draw a picture of the defendant and the jury. Well, I became like a ringside artist for wrestling. And so every week I was going down there and drawing, the depictions of what happened in the matches. And after about 5 or 6 weeks, he called me up again and said, hey, we want you to actually come over and be on the show. We want to let everybody see who's actually doing these drawings. So that was my first time ever actually going and getting to meet, being sort of backstage and getting to meet the wrestlers. And just so happens, the guy that I mentioned, the big star in the territory at the time, the fabulous Jackie Fargo, he also owned a little nightclub, a restaurant. It doubled as a restaurant nightclub type thing. And he called me off to the side and he said, hey kid, I like your artwork. How about you coming over to my nightclub and doing some paintings of me and on the walls of my nightclub? And so this was like, once again, I'm get to hang around and see my biggest star that I've ever seen on television, and I'm drawing his picture, painting it on the walls of his nightclub. And from that, he came up with some kind of crazy idea of like starting a sign company with his name on it, and you know, Jackie Fargo's sign company, me doing all the work. But one thing led to another, and it finally wound up where I'm doing artwork on a regular basis, but I'm hanging out with Jackie Fargo, getting to drive. I'm basically being a stooge for Jackie Fargo. He's having me driving to the towns and you know, the closest towns and everything. But that's still, it was great to get to hang around with him. And I'll never forget. Finally, one time I said, I would love to someday be able to try, you know, to be a wrestler. I would love to do this sometime, just if I just had a little like an opening match or something like that. And he told me, he said, look, kid, you're too good an artist. You don't want to get into wrestling. Stick to being an artist, and trust me, you know, that's what you need to do. And I kept begging and pleading with him and driving him crazy. And I said, you know, if you could just try it one time, I promise, you know, I'll go back to being a wrestler and I won't bother you anymore with this. So finally, after a lot of hounding and a lot of pestering and going out and trying it on the side of little independent shows, he finally came to me and he said, all right, if I get you this one match, if I get you booked on a television match, then you forget about this and you go back to doing artwork. And of course, I promised him that I would. And that was 43 years ago, and it's still, you know, to this day, I'm still doing the wrestling. But now this is through Mike's Headlocked I've been able to come full circle and go back to do what I really thought I wanted to do with my career at the start, and that was doing comic book art. So I've done a cover on how many? Three different Headlocked comic books so far, and I really enjoy doing that. So this is kind of like a fulfillment of a lifelong ambition for me, so I really enjoy working with it.
Terry, you really knocked it out of the park with this cover. Mike, can you hold that up again? I mean, this is a riff on Norman Rockwell. Look at that.
Norman Rockwell is one of my all-time favorite artists and inspirations. And the original cover that was on a Saturday Evening Post was from about like a 1934 issue of Saturday Evening Post, in which a young man was looking at just a bodybuilder on the cover of that, and just it said we want to be a He-Man, I think, on the original Norman Rockwell. And it was just a typical 98-pound weakling working out with some weights, hoping to someday have a big muscle man body. And so Mike came up with the idea, let's transform it into the young man that wanted to be a wrestler someday and give it that Norman Rockwell look and the Saturday Evening Post look. And I was real happy with the way it turned out.
I think it's fantastic. Mike, can you tell us a little